Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today, we welcome Ashley McCray. She's a medical student. Today's KevinMD article is Failure is Not the End, Creating Space for Grace in the Medical Field. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. I am a rising fourth year medical student. I started medical school several years ago, and by faith, I have made it this far. I'm Christian. I know that God is the reason that I've gotten here this far. My story started with a car accident 4 weeks into medical school by a hit and run driver, and I miraculously survived that accident. Being in a car accident is why I had such a hard time my first year of medical school.
Okay.
And I've had numerous people support me on my journey, but sometimes it was hard. And that's why I wrote the article, because I want people to give grace to those who need it. I recently got in another car accident several years later. That was actually last month or earlier this month. And I survived miraculously again.
Hmm.
And I had to reschedule my licensing exam because of it. So what I'm asking people to do when they look at people who have failed is to give them a chance. Give them a chance to tell their story like you're giving me a chance to tell mine.
So tell us about how that failure of the licensing exam is this step one that we're talking about?
Yeah, so I'm actually a DO student, so it's Comlex 1 for
Okay.
me.
Okay.
But it was step 1 when I failed it. So I started out as an allopathic medical student,
Hmm.
but now I'm an osteopathic medical student.
Okay. And tell me about how you bounce back from that setback. What are some of the things that you did?
Well, I persevered after I failed the exam multiple times at my last institution. I applied to medical school again on hope and a prayer,
Hmm.
and I got in by faith, grace, persistence, love, and emphasis on grace. So this is like a dream that I'm living to have gotten into
Hmm.
medical school twice.
So sometimes, as you know, failure is always a taboo topic in the medical field. So why do you think it's sometimes so difficult for those of us in the medical field to talk about failure?
I think because there's a standard of perfection for medical professionals, and we're held to that standard on so many levels from being a student to when we're working in the field. I just think being a perfectionist isn't what we should strive for. We should strive for giving each other grace and doing our best and not being the best, like I said in the article.
So when you say giving yourself grace, what does that look like? What did you do to give yourself grace?
I told myself that failure wasn't an option and that I could get back up and try again instead of thinking that failure was the end and that there was no grace to try again.
And tell me about the people around you who gave you that support during these difficult times.
So, first things first, it's people that God put in my path, like professors and friends from back home, and my family supported me. Those are the people who I received by grace.
How about the medical school itself? Did you receive support from the medical school through during these times where you weren't able to pass the exam?
Well, I didn't really receive the best support from my first medical school, but I received support from my second medical school. One of the things that's been hard is learning that I have ADHD, and I don't know if that might come across in the interview, but that's part of why I was a little late to the interview is the time management. So I'm so sorry about that.
And in terms of the diagnosis of ADHD, were there any support from the school to help you through classes or help you through these exams with that diagnosis?
So there were none when I had my first chance at medical school, but at my second medical school, I got accommodations, and those accommodations helped me to pass pretty much all of my exams. And I passed all of my shelf exams this year.
What kind of accommodations did they give you?
The accommodations that they gave me were time accommodations and like time and a half in a separate room.
Hmm.
So time and a half in a separate room were what I needed to succeed.
And how important is it for medical students who may have ADHD like yourself to seek out help and perhaps have some of these accommodations?
I think it's extremely important. It's made all the difference in my academic performance. And I unfortunately won't have accommodations for my licensing exam. So that's part of why I've had so many failures. In fact, I think that's the reason why I've had so many failures is because the medical licensing boards, they make it a little challenging to get accommodations. It
Hmm.
was even challenging to get it at my school, but by grace, I was able to receive it.
So, is there anything that you're doing differently to prepare for the upcoming exam?
Yes, I bought a prep course this time. I've never done a prep course before, and so that's something that I do recommend to other people if they can afford it.
How about your advice to other medical students who may be in similar situations? They may not have passed the first step exams in allopathic medical schools, for instance. Do you have any advice for other medical students who may be experiencing the same issues that you did?
I say, honestly, for me, the reason I kept going for so long is because of faith. I had faith in passing one day. God told me I would pass, and I'm still believing that I will pass. So when people have asked me this privately, I've genuinely said, pray about it and see if this is the path for you because God told me it was the path for me. So that's what I would tell them. Just like seek wise counsel and give yourself grace.
So, how do you think these experiences that you're telling us about is that going to change you as a future physician when you talk with patients?
Oh, definitely. It helps me to empathize with the patients that I see as a medical student, increases the empathy that I have because of the journey and story that I have and that God gave me.
So, when you say grace, whether you received it from others or extended to yourself, tell me how that has helped you through the highs and lows of so far your medical school career.
It gives me space to be imperfect. It gives me space to try again. It gives me space to advocate for myself and for other people. I advocate all the time as a medical student, and that's how it's going to impact me as a doctor.
We're talking to Ashley McCray. She's a medical student. Today's KevinMD article is Failure is Not the End, Creating Space for Grace in the Medical Field. Ashley, tell me the message that you want to share with other medical students who may be listening to you today.
God is everything to me. Jesus is everything to me. That is why I have survived those accidents because there's been multiple. That is why I got into medical school twice. That is why I have been living in a miracle, and that is why I'm going to pass my exam. That is my advice to share with everyone.
And tell me some take home messages that you want to leave with my audience.
And the take home message is to have faith, extend grace, and you will see success.
Ashley, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Kevin.